Hi, I call you a curve sketcher. Are you ready to go along with me? Is it a task? But I gotta tell you, we're gonna advance you first to the next stage from drawing from very simple linear graphs to what we have done is a quadratic. Now what happens if I put a graph like this? My dear, look at it very carefully and analyze. Can x ever be 0? What will happen if x is 0? Any number, if x is 0 and you have y equals to 1 over x, let's put it in 1 upon 0. Any number divided by 0 will give you not 0 but infinity. So you get infinity. Oops. So that tells you in this graph, x can never be 0. I hope you get clear. If the up is a 0 divided by 1 or a 0 divided by any number, you get a 0. But a 10 or a 100 divided by 0, they are never the same. This is infinity. Alright, having got that information in, you now realize that x, the curve of y equal to 1 over x, can never cross this line x equal to 0. And what is the other name for x equal to 0? We call it the y-axis, yes. And so in other words, this is now a taboo. This graph cannot cross this line. There is no values to it. So we can say that what x is equal to 0 is called an asymptote. An asymptote. Alright? It's an interesting word, isn't it? Asymptote. Well, it tells you that this x can never be equal to 0, and that's one thing we've got to get clear. Now when we draw the graph, alright, let's put a number very close to 0. What happens to it? Alright, we're going to draw the graph of y equals to 1 over x. When x is equal to, for example, let's take the values of x and we take the values of y. When x is very close to 0, 0.0001. What is y going to be? It's going to be 1 over that. Y is going to be a 1 over 0.000401. If we shift it 3, 4, 5. You shift it 5 times. So similarly for the up number, you shift it 5 times. So when you shift it 5 times, what do we get? We've got 100,000. Ooh! So you can see that your y gets 100,000. Do you see what I meant? When x gets closer and closer to the 0 line. For example, x is 0.000001. How many places are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Y is equals to 1 divided by this number. 1 divided by a hugely small number, really small. And if you move it 7 times, that means your y is equal to 10 million. Yep. So you can see that it becomes really, really big. So when x is getting closer to 0, your y is approaching infinity. So that's what we say when x gets nearer to 0, when x approaches 0, y approaches infinity. Do you get it? Alright, so because we said that when x is 0, y is infinity. Do you know infinity? I don't know. Right up there, right? So when x approaches 0, y is approaching infinity. So what happens? But when x gets bigger, what happens to y? When x gets 1,000, y is 1 over 1,000. That's getting smaller. When x gets to be 1,000,000, y is 1 over 1,000,000. Oh, that's really small. So it's the opposite way. When x gets bigger, y gets smaller. When x approaches infinity, x is 1,000,000,000,000, the y becomes almost 0, but it's still positive. So the shape of the graph will be like this. When x is approaching 0, y is almost infinity, and when x gets bigger and bigger, I shouldn't touch this line, alright? Y is getting almost 0. Similarly, alright, that's what happens when x gets nearer to 0, y gets to infinity. When x gets bigger, this is x and that's y. When x gets bigger, y gets smaller. Similarly, if x is negative, alright, this is the negative part of the x-axis, what happens to y? Look at it and you get a negative here. So when x is a negative 0.00001, ooh, y becomes a negative 100,000. A negative 100,000 up there, negative right down below. Alright, when x is a minus, look at that, minus, how do you read this number? I wouldn't want to challenge you to that. It's a minus 0.0070 zeros. Alright, 6 zeros with a 1 there. You move it 7 times. It's a minus 10 million. And our graph, it goes right down the y. This is the y value. That's the x value closer to the 0 end, the negative 0 end of the x-axis. Alright? And when x is negative, like a negative 100, y is still a negative. 1 over 100, a minus 100. What do you get? It's a minus 0.01. When x gets a minus 1,000, what does y become? 1 over a minus 1,000, which is getting smaller. Y is minus 0.001. Alright? What happens when x is approaching infinity? X approaches infinity in this case. A negative infinity. What does y become? 1 over a negative infinity. Alright? In this case for B, I'm looking at B. Alright, so 1 over negative infinity is a 0 because x is so huge, almost approaching 0. So please take note of that. So the shape of the graph, it will be like that. Alright, this shape is going down and this is up. So that's the shape. Are you clear about it? Think about it. Alright, put some numbers in, experiment on it and see what it's like. So that's the shape of the graph, y equals to 1 over x. Can I write it here? Y equals to 1 over x. Right? The yellow graph. What happens if x, in this case, y equals to minus 1 over x? It's the same thing as that, alright? But what's the difference in the graph is that the negative values of x, the negative and the negative becomes a positive. So when we take the negative values and we put it in, the negative with the negative there, it becomes a positive. The shape of the graph like this, and in this case is this way. So the name of this graph is y equals to minus 1 over x. Alright? What you can do, I know you're really curious, alright? You want to investigate. Please do try. Fit in some values in the x and look at how y behaves and think through, and then you will see the logic of it all and understand even better why the shape of the graph behaves like this. Alright? And now one more time. What is the name of this line for this graph? We call it, this line, remember, x is 0 and it's an asymptote. No one crosses this line, all right? Okay, and also if you look at it, if you look at this graph, your y is equal to 0, and the graphs too in this case does not cross because of the nature of the readings as we see. Alright, now let's move on to this. Y equals to 1 over x squared. We've learned about y equals to x squared. But what happens when y is 1 over x squared? Is it going to be a parabola? A curve that's symmetrical about the axis? No. Look at the x that's right at the bottom. Can x ever be a 0? X can never be a 0 because anything about 0 gives you infinity. So this graph, again, x is going to be, as x equals to 0 is the asymptote. And how do we draw this graph? Look at it again. It's quite similar to what we have just done. All the negative values, y equals to 1 over x squared, all the negative values becomes positive. It's just like 1 over x, but all the negative values of x becomes positive. So the earlier graph, you could see that the y was negative, but now it becomes positive. And we could do, you can try with a little experiment like x equals to, for example, x. All right, you take a value of 0.01. What does x squared become? It becomes 0.0001. All right, 2 decimal place becomes 4 decimal place. This 1 over 100, now it becomes 1 over 10,000. 10th, 100,000, 10,000, yes. So you can see 1 over, all right, even if it's negative, when you square it, it's positive. Do you see it for the x squared? So whatever negative values that you put in for your x, they're all going to be positive. And you're going to inverse it then. I'm going to take the space from here, which I actually wanted to do. Alright, 1 over x squared, that's your y. 1 over this number, what do you get? You shift 4 places, 1, 2, 3, 4, you get 10,000. Alright, so do you see how fast it moves? If I put minus 0.001, what do you get? You get a 0.3 decimal place becomes 6 decimal place. You put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you move 6 places, you get 1,000,000. 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000. Alright, you get 1,000,000. So you can see that whatever negative numbers that you're putting, they get to be positive. So, but if x is, for example, 10, alright, a minus 10, y becomes a 100, and this is 1 over 100, right? You get, it's getting smaller. If x is minus 1,000, y becomes a 1,000,000, alright? And 1 over 1,000,000 is going to become a lot more smaller. You can see the numbers getting really small for y. So what is the shape of the graph? When x gets towards 0, y is approaching infinity. And when x is getting hugely negative, really, really small, y is getting nearly 0. So the shape of this graph will be this way. And of course, for the positive values of x is the same thing, the shape is this. So this is the graph of y equal to 1 over x squared. Got it? Right. I hope you understand the reasons and the difference between this, because it's not a square here, y equals to 1 over x, so that's why the y is negative. Now you just flip it up and you get it as positive, and that's y equals to 1 over x squared. Now in the case of this is just a reflection of this. Alright, y from positive becomes negative of what you've got here. So this is all the negative version, and this graph here is y equals to minus 1 over x squared. Y is going to be negative because this number is always positive, right? So that's the shape of this graph. Have you got it? Good. Let's move on to the next level. Before I get to even do a little bit more challenging problem sums, I just want to go through a very quick revision to see if you know it all. What do you think this graph looks like? Yes, it's going to look like that. Whether it's 300,000 above this number, the behavior and the shape of the graph will be like that. So a y equals to 3 over x squared. The shape of the graph will be like this. Y, alright? For the second one, what's the shape of the graph going to be? Well, the graph is going to be the positive values of x will be this, the negative values of x will be that. Alright? And if you have, look at this, here's a minus. What's the shape? I think I better write this down. This is y is 3 over x squared. Here, y is going to be 3 over x. Alright, because the negative values of x will give you negative values of y. In this case, the y is equal to minus 3 over x. Remember, the negative and the negative values of x will make it positive. So the shape of the graph is this. And then the positive values of x with the negative minus 3 will make it negative. So that's the shape. And if you look at the fourth case, y equals to 3x. You're an expert in that right now, right? It takes the shape of y equals to mx plus mx plus c. Look, I'm so in love with 3. Y, the gradient is a 3, alright? The c is a 0. So my dear, the graph will have a c that is equal to 0 is passing by here. Y is 3x is a positive gradient. M is greater than 0. And as for the last shape of this graph, y equals to 3x squared. We've done it so many times. Yes, it's a parabola, and when x is 0, y is 0. There's only one root, and so there's a line of symmetry, right? And so the shape of this graph is this. Y is 3x squared. Got it? Alright, this is just about x and x squared, whether it's a numerator or denominator. I hope you've got a better understanding. As we move on, you will get better and better.